Leadership Reimagined, where game-changing conversations are reshaping the world of work. I'm Janice Ellig, the CEO and founder of Ellig Group, Executive Search Advisors, where we are reimagining search through our long-standing commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. On today's topic, creating workplaces that work for women, 60 years of progress, I am delighted to welcome Lorraine Hariton, President, CEO, and Board Director of Catalyst, the organization that has been promoting workplace equality for more than 60 years, along with many of the world's most powerful CEOs. Lorraine brings a diverse and robust background in technology, innovation, and partnership to her role at Catalyst. Beginning her career at IBM, holding executive as well as entrepreneurial positions in Silicon Valley, and serving in the Department of State during the Obama administration, Lorraine knows leadership in the corporate, private, nonprofit, and government sectors. Involved in women's advancement and leadership initiatives throughout her career, Lorraine created the Global STEM Alliance and its 1000 Girls Futures program, a global mentoring initiative advancing women in the workplace at the New York Academy of Science. She also served as a UN Women Global Innovation Coalition for Change, the Stanford Clayman Institute for Gender Research, and Watermark, an organization of women executives in the tech industry. As we approach Women's History Month, I'm incredibly honored to introduce today's guest, an inspiring executive dedicated to accelerating the pace of change for women. We have so much to cover, and if you listen to the very end, we will conclude with some key takeaways you do not want to miss. So with that, Lorraine, I'm delighted you could join us today.
And Janice, thank you so much for having me. And also, Janice, you've been a supporter of women in the workplace for many, many years. Your Breakfast of Champion event is amazing. So we have a long-term partnership with you and myself and with Catalyst. So I'm really delighted to be here to talk about something that's really near and dear to both of us.
Lorraine, you're right. We have been doing this for a number of years together, and we are aligned in our mission. And we have many CEOs, many on your board, who are so for gender diversity and equality in the boardroom and in the C-suite. So thank you for all you're doing. And today's episode is creating workplaces that work for women, 60 years of progress. So can you expand on this and tell us about Catalyst, this amazing organization, and what it is and what it has done to initiate and drive change for women for more than 60 years?
Catalyst as an organization, has evolved over those many years, starting in 1962, when our founder, Felice Schwartz, started Catalyst. She was really looking at how she, as a woman who was a college-educated woman, had finished putting her children in school, how she could go into the business world. And of course, the world that she faced was very different than today. There were very limited options for women. So she was really actually just looking at how to have women have part-time roles. But over the years, Catalyst has evolved. It was started out helping individual women advance in the workplace. And then we moved to really focusing on how do we create an environment, a workplace that really can work for women, which is really our focus now. And we expanded to work today with over 500 multinational companies. About 40 of them are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies on my board. And we do three things. We provide research around what it takes to build workplaces that work for women. We provide learning products and tools that help the companies advance women in the workplace. And then we have a very broad community. We bring them together around events and learning and learning from each other. We focus on a number of different areas. We focused on how to create inclusive workplaces. We focus on how to engage men in the prospect of doing that. We look at the future of work. We look at intersectionality and the different aspects of your identity and how it affects that. We also are moving towards looking from the shop floor to the C-suite across all the different levels in the organization.
You mentioned Felice Schwartz back in 1962. And, she really was a trailblazer. And it was all about helping women enter the workforce and thrive there. And so I think it's relevant for us to remember a typical headline back then was how to work when your husband is against it. In the 60s, this was like women trying to just get into the workforce. It was really quite a battle that they were facing and challenges, including husbands and others who were not that receptive. So when you look ahead to what may be different in the future, given the changes that have been made, what do you see that some of the challenges will be mitigated in terms of what women will face going forward in the workplace and the role of Catalyst to get that to happen?
We're focused on how all women can thrive, how we can have equity for all. In fact, on our 60th anniversary, our theme was the Great Reimagining. And because so many things had changed through the pandemic, that we really need to reimagine what work is all about and what it means for women to be successful in work. So, we went through this very large experiment on working remotely, which has opened up opportunities to think about and give more opportunities for women, because flexibility of that type has always been important for women. We looked at how leadership has changed, where leadership needs to be more human, more adaptable, more empathetic. We are now looking at how all women can thrive, because we've been focused at Catalyst mostly on how we advance women into leadership, into the C-suite, onto boards, into CEO positions. But coming off of the pandemic, we also understand that all women need to find how they can be successful, how they can find what success means to them, how they can thrive. And companies, we're actually in a moment where we have full employment. They just announced that, this is the lowest unemployment rate in the United States in over 50 years. Companies are really concerned about talent retention and attraction. And they're concerned especially around frontline workers who were very affected by the pandemic and where we have a higher representation of marginalized people. So Catalyst is broadening its scope and looking at equity for everyone and how we can do equity for all.
So, Lorraine, how did you come to be where you are today? I know professionally this is very important to you, and personally it's very important to you. So go back to your early years, your upbringing, how it shaped you, and some of those challenges that you took on in your early life and how you made them opportunities.
When I've reflected a lot on this, especially given our 60-year history. And, actually my mother passed away about 3 months ago. And she, like Felice Schwartz, our founder, they were contemporaries, along with Nancy Pelosi and Ruth Bader Ginsburg and women of those age. They came of age in a world in the 50s that was very different than the world that I even came of age in, which was in the mid to late 70s. And I realized that my mother, who was someone who created a real role model for me, because while she was a teacher before she had children, she put her children into school. When she came out, she actually went back to school. She ended up getting her PhD. She did a seminal piece of research on women's sexual fantasies during intercourse, which ended up a front cover article in Psychology Today. And then she had a very successful career in her 40s and 50s and into her 60s as a clinical psychologist and sex therapist. So she really raised me to be independent, to reach my full potential. And she ended up being, in the later part of her life, the major breadwinner in our family. So, I think she was very important in setting a role model for me. And I also had another great role model, which was my mentor and sponsor, which was my calculus teacher my first year in college. I had one of the challenges for me when I was a child is I have dyslexia. And because of this dyslexia, it limited my scope of what I was really good at. I was very good at math and organization. I was not so good at reading. I had reading issues. I was awkward as a child, but Gordon Pritchett, he was my calculus teacher, and I was also actually babysitting for his kids. He took a real interest in me, and he suggested that I study computer science. In fact, I was up at Hamilton College in upstate New York at the time. They didn't even have any computer curriculum. So I did a self-study on that. I ended up transferring to Stanford. So my first passion was really around using computers to make change in the world. So that got me out to Silicon Valley. I feel from the dyslexia, it really helped shape me in a direction where I started to hone what my true strengths were. And it also built a lot of resiliency and tenacity because, I had a lot of challenges in my childhood. It wasn't an easy path for me. The second thing I think that really influenced me is, being a tech woman in Silicon Valley in the 80s and 90s, you were always a minority. And one of the things that I started to do is to really build my relationships with other women in Silicon Valley. I became involved with this organization, which was called at the time the Forum for Women Entrepreneurs and Executives. And I went to their classes. I went on their advisory board. I ended up on their board and chairman of their board. I then went on the board of the Stanford Clayman Institute for Gender Research. And I started to really appreciate the women who had mentored and supported me, as well as mentoring and supporting other women in this network that I had. So, I think that then shaped this passion that I've had around advancing women in the workplace that I'm doing now as my full-time job. It was really my lived experience in Silicon Valley in technology that made me passionate about this whole area.
You are the perfect person to be running Catalyst. What a background. That's incredible. From your mother to your professor in calculus to the Silicon Valley journey. Now I know why you're such a good leader of Catalyst. Really great. Really great, Lorraine. So let me ask you, though, there were challenges for you along the way, not just being dyslexic, but also being in Silicon Valley. How did you handle that male-dominated world?
It's interesting. When I was a leader in that world, like I say, I think the relationships that I developed with women, and also I looked for companies where women could be successful. In fact, when I went to Harvard Business School and I came out of Harvard Business School, I decided to go back to Silicon Valley, but I actually decided to continue to work for IBM for a number of years because IBM had a culture. There were a lot of women in leadership. In fact, as you know, Ginny Ramodi, who was a peer of mine, she became CEO of IBM. There were a lot of women in leadership, and there was good work-life balance and a culture where women could be successful. While it was a difficult culture in many environments, there were places that were really great to work in Silicon Valley while I was there, and there still are. And I often tell women, and it's part of what we try to do as Catalyst, we try to play workplaces that work for women. We try to explain to organizations that if they want to attract and retain women, they need to have a culture where they can be successful.
You picked your spots well. And you're advising women that way. So in 2018, you took the reins at Catalyst, and that was an important time in its 60-year history. And you have a very powerful chair in Julie Sweet, who is the CEO of Accenture, who is, I know, very dedicated to the mission of Catalyst. She's been a podcast guest on my series as well, and speaks about the role of women and how it's a business imperative. It sounds like you're truly writing the next chapter for women's equality in the workplace. So tell us about that strategy that you're unleashing with your board.
And just saying, Julie Sweet as our chairman of the board has really leaned in to help us together to really craft the strategy going forward. And there's really two pieces of our strategy. One I alluded to earlier, which is to expand Catalyst's focus from advancing women into positions of leadership, which has been our focus. And by the way, we still have a lot of work to do there. We're not defocusing on that. We're just expanding our frame to make sure that all women can thrive, whether it's from the shop floor to the C-suite, looking at gender, race, and ethnicity. And we do that on a global basis. So we're actually doing joint research with Accenture on the area of frontline workers that we will be talking about at our major event that we're having on March 30th. That's our awards conference and dinner, talking about some of our initial findings in there. And really, we're going to be working to turn that into actionable tools and recommendations and practices that companies can roll out very quickly. So that's one big area that we're focused on. The other area is trying to really expand the impact that we have through our over 500 supporters. And we really want to expand the number of supporters that we have that are on the journey with us that we can make impact through, because that's how we're focused. And, the focus on advancing women and DEI in general has really expanded. Many companies truly understand that if they want to attract and retain the best talent, if they want to be competitive, they have to have a diverse workforce, and they've got to have a workforce that attracts that talent. So there's many more companies that are on that journey that we think we can have impact for. And we want to also deepen our engagement so that they can make progress and we can make progress together. So in order to do that, we're really on a digital transformation journey where we have a lot of content, a lot of know-how, a lot of research that we've accumulated over many years that we continue to add to. But we want to make sure that it's easily accessible in ways that people can really absorb, not only to our day-to-day context that tend to be in the HR function and chief diversity office, but so that they can help them make impact across their whole organization. So we are in the process of making a real investment in our digital transformation so that we can be more agile and impactful. And I have to say, really every organization is on this journey because technology is changing so rapidly, but especially organizations like that are fundamentally content and learning organizations is critical to be able to do that effectively.
Well, what is so interesting to me, because I've watched Catalyst over the years, and it truly has evolved, and it's evolving even further from, the fundamental research that was done to, this incredible board that you have and people are signing up, including you've got something called the MARC Initiative, Men Accelerating Real Change, which I want to talk about in a minute. But it's now going to digitally how to make all of these tools readily accessible to not just the Fortune 500 or 1,000, but to many, many organizations. So you're really doing a major deliverables that people can employ in their organizations as I hear this new strategy.
We're incredibly lucky to have over 500 major organizations that work together in the Catalyst community, together to champion the mission to drive change. So we see our focus as making change through these millions of people that these companies represent. So our research is enabling us to drive change through these organizations. So we're moving towards understanding that. If you look 20 years ago, it was much more about awareness. Now it's about driving real change. So the organization's evolved with the environment that we're serving.
Yes, and you do have powerful leaders that are going to make that happen with you, and they're committed. I know you have a phenomenal board, and you have others who, the name Catalyst is a major brand. So I want to remind our audience that you are listening to Creating Workplaces That Work for Women, 60 Years of Progress with Lorraine Hariton, the CEO of Catalyst. The topics we cover like today's are all current, and a new topic with a new game changer is released every month. This is a great way to stay current on relevant issues happening around us. Now I'm going to return to Lorraine to talk about the MARC Initiative, Men Accelerating Real Change. Can you tell us about this and how it started?
I talked a little bit at the beginning about Catalyst's history, that we moved from helping individual women to helping change the workplace. And, about 10 years ago, we started to realize that women can't just be talking to women. We need to involve the men who are in power positions who can make change. So we started to do research around that. We had a lot of support from people like Procter & Gamble, who helped us with our initial research. What we found is that most men are interested in helping, but they don't know how, or they don't even realize that some of their behaviors that they've been developed over many years that come from their childhood were really biased. They were making it difficult for women to advance. Often they thought they were helping when really they weren't. So we developed a whole program based on this research that we actually have scaled. It's workshops and dialogues and tools to help men understand their biases. Everyone has unconscious biases. We're all a product of our culture, but how can they become more aware? And then how can they themselves become champions for women in their workplace on a daily basis to make a difference? And Mark has become really a movement. And we have, Chevron gave us a major grant to scale Mark so that it could go from the C-suite down to the first line managers so that everyone could really understand and be part of all this. And it's been rolled out to a lot of companies who really feel it's a game changer in terms of really making a difference in their organizations.
Well, and Michael Wirth of Chevron CEO is so supportive, right, of your initiatives and everything that you're doing at Catalyst.
Yeah, he's been great. In fact, when I first came on board, one of the first things I did as I knew they were interested, I went out to San Ramon, I met with Mike, and this ended up in them giving us the largest major gift that Catalyst ever had for $5 million to scale Mark. And then Procter & Gamble and Dow Chemical came along to support that effort. So because of that, we've been able to really now have a really robust, scalable set of offerings around Mark.
Well, I'd say it's your major influencing skills, but it's also their commitment to the cause. So this is great. You mentioned the March 30th of this year Catalyst Awards, and I've been to many of those dinners. They're so inspiring because you really do celebrate companies that are making a difference for women. And I understand you're going to be honoring two this year. And one of those is a true turnaround story. Can you talk to us about that?
I want to talk a little bit about the Hartford that we're going to be honoring this year. So the Hartford actually came to us in 2016 and applied for the award, but they didn't get the award. So we went back and we talked to them about what they needed to do, and then they decided to really mount a major campaign. And the thing that I like to highlight about the Hartford is that they had really top CEO commitment to this, and they looked at what they were going to do across every department at every level on different dimensions, on the policies and practices they have, how they built an inclusive workplace, how they created the right culture and environment, how they measure and hold people accountable over that basically 5 or 6 year period that they really invested. They really moved the needle at every level. And if you look at their numbers and the numbers on our website, you'll see really substantial progress around the number of women in executive levels, the people of color. So, you have an organization that realized that this is hard work. It's a major cultural change, and that there needs to be sustained commitment over years to really make that change. But in the end, they've transformed the organization.
That describes to me what the former CEO of Accenture, Pierre Nardin, had said. It must be personal. It must be a personal objective. And obviously, this company has made it a business and a personal objective to make it happen. It shows that it can be done, right?
Absolutely. And the other one organization we're honoring is the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. And their motivation is they wanted to mirror the community that they serve. And this is true of lots of healthcare. 75% of their employees are women, but like 40% of the top level were women. So they really needed to move to really reflect it at every level. And that's true of a lot of organizations that you have that situation. Procter & Gamble is another example where, their customer, it's a woman, it's often a mom, and they're committed to reflecting the population that they serve, because that is what's going to allow them to be able to be competitive, so that their workforce reflects their customer.
Well, 50% of the population or more are women, and we're the buyers. So, yeah,
Exactly,
it is a business
exactly.
imperative, and it makes such a difference to have those diverse voices around the table and from the boardroom, the C-suite, to really deliver what customers, employees, communities, and investors want. So you're driving that change, and you had a very impactful and informative message in your 2023 letters to CEOs. Talk to us a little bit about what you said in that.
The letter talks about how we really need to move to accelerating progress towards equity on all fronts. and that we need to be making sure that all women can thrive, that we're at a moment in time where there's that opportunity because the workplace is changing significantly. We have a talent shortage going on. We have rapid technological change. So therefore, we're broadening our scope. We're broadening our focus. I also do want to reflect a little bit on the fact that we have made a lot of progress. The workforce is very different, as I said in the very beginning, from the workforce that my mother or our founder, Felice Schwartz, went into. And even over the last 5 years since I've been involved in Catalyst, we've made change. In fact, at the awards event that we're going to have on March 30th, where we're going to be honoring the Hartford and University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, we also, have on stage, we have two dinner co-chairs. Both of them are women, the CEO of Zoetis and the CEO of Northrop Grumman. And we have Julie Sweet, who's our dinner chair, the CEO of Accenture. The CEO of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center is a woman. So 5 out of 6 of the people on stage are going to be women.
And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. I love it.
I'm really excited about this because when I the first dinner I did, it was not that case. All of the CEOs of the 3 companies were men. Our dinner chair was a man, and the men have, obviously these are men who are really committed to what we're doing. But 5 years ago, we were not in a position to be able to do what we're doing. The chair of the board, when I came on board, Kathy Engelbert, was the first woman chair of Catalyst in its 56-year history at that moment in time. The number of women CEOs in the Fortune 500 in 2018, when I joined, was 4.8%. It is now at 10.8%. Now, I don't think 10.8% is something that we should be jumping up and down about, but the fact that it has doubled, more than doubled in the last 5 years, is something to celebrate. The fact that we are now over 30% women on boards is something to celebrate because, you've been very involved in this. You remember when that was aspirational. So, we have made really clear progress. We're still on a track to do more, but that is also why I feel that Catalyst can move to broadening its focus, to look at frontline workers because we've made progress in some of these other areas.
I agree. I think the progress, I can remember the Breakfast of Corporate Champions Women's Forum when I founded that in 2011, the number was 16.7% women on boards, right? So we honored companies at 20%, and now it's going on to 32% women on board. So it has doubled, right? And I think that's great progress. We wanted it 50%, but we have to recognize progress has been made, and that's the men and women, and including the Catalyst and Women's Forum and other organizations really driving the change. But I think, it's at the top of these organizations. They see it's a business imperative, and they don't want to lose out on having that intellectual capacity of great women at the table. So congratulations to you. And so now that we have Women's History Month coming up in March in the US and International Women's Day around the world, what is Catalyst doing to mark that moment? And how can we all get involved?
Catalyst every year for International Women's Day and, of course, Women's History Month, the whole month, does something that we try to really drive impact. So we have a campaign this year called #Inclusion Thrives. What we are going to be doing is having people talk about inclusive leadership, inclusive moments that they've experienced, inclusive moments that leaders have provided, because not only 1/3 of employees feel that they are an inclusive workplace where they really feel they can belong. So there's a lot of work to be done to really build that type of environment. And we want to show what good looks like. We want to have leaders and people talk about what worked for them. We're going to be highlighting a number of leaders talking about this and people talking about this. And we have a toolkit that any of you can get involved in and download and do it on social to talk about what your experiences are. I talked about, so when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was working for the guy who was VP of sales at a division of IBM called Rome. And my next step in my career ladder was to be a branch manager. So he offered me the job, held it open during my maternity leave. And he also, the local branch that was 10 minutes away from me, he actually moved the branch manager up to San Francisco so that I could go to the Santa Clara branch. And I mean, he did it and made it more accessible to me. So, I will never forget what he did for me. And he didn't ask me, he just did it.
Lorraine, that's a great story. What does good look like? Oh my goodness, that is just, he didn't ask you, he just did it.
He
saw it
did,
and he
and I
did it.
will, ever be grateful for Bob Finocchio and the work, what he did for me in my career.
So there's a lot that we can look at on your website in terms of celebrating Women's History Month in March, right? What are your parting words for the audience in terms of how we can all help to make a difference in this world?
You have a great audience here, and what Catalyst really is, and we've been talking about it the whole time, is a community of committed people, committed leaders who want to make a difference and change. They want to make a difference in their organization. They want to make a difference in their everyday interactions. If you are involved in this in any way, and everyone is involved in some way, join the Catalyst community, become a supporter of Catalyst, be involved with the work that we're doing, and drive change within your organizations in the worlds where you can make a difference.
This is a very rich conversation, and I think everybody, I want to say, please visit the website of Catalyst, all you're doing, the tools you're providing to organizations, the amazing board that you have, and the companies that you have honored, over 100 companies. So the progress is being made. So Lorraine, I want to thank you for joining us today and sharing your incredible personal and your professional story. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in to another game-changing conversation on Leadership Reimagined. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or visit our website at elligroup.com. Lorraine Hariton, CEO and Board Director of Catalyst, thank you so much for sharing everything today with us, and we are on this journey with you.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you for the opportunity. And I hope I'll see some of you on March 30th at the Hilton in New York to come to our awards conference and dinner.
You'll see me there. Thank you so much.